Indeed.
Nailed it. And that voice you heard is Clive. You can find him on Twitter, Clive BFCL. Clive.
Hello.
Clive, I have to say, we do a lot of pods together, you and me, and obviously Tim and Paul and all of us. And I think there's a lot of different things we do that are a lot of fun. Yesterday, we did our Premier League power rankings over on the Patreon side. And because a lot of those teams are shit, you did your usual analysis. I got to have my silly sort of fun. It sparked a lot of interesting controversy about where I rank teams, that's for sure. But people really liked it. I just want to say, nice job. I enjoyed chatting with you for that one. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was good fun. And you do get me going on a couple of people. I like to be a nice guy, but eventually I've got to get the old 2-footed tackle out, right, on a couple of clubs. So, and they got it.
I think your section on Casemiro alone is worth chopping up and throwing into a main pod in the future at some point, and your affinity for certain fried chicken places and things like that. But we can come on to that another time. As we sit here recording, obviously you've just listened to the Charles Watts section. Things continue to develop. It looks like Balogun is inching closer to Monaco, which I'd be, I think, happy with over Chelsea. There's also rumors that Saudi Arabia are legitimately in for Pepe. The Pepe thing's a little interesting, but none of it's concrete enough or need to dive into deeper than what we did in the previous section. So I think what we can do is we can turn our attention to Fulham. And Clive, before we get onto the Fulham of it, I think the question on everybody's mind is, will we see the same thing again? Will we see Partey right back? Will we see, it won't be Tomiyasu because it'd be suspended. Will we see Kiwior left? Or, will the Tomiyasu suspension mean that Arteta finally goes back to the quote unquote traditional back four that we used all last season? What's your instinct on whether we're going to continue to see the same thing, much to the chagrin of a lot of people who don't seem to understand it, or are we going to go back to something that looks a little bit more familiar?
Yeah, so familiar back four. Last year wasn't so familiar the year before. We used to have Kieran Tierney up in lane 5. Remember that one? Then we got Zinchenko in, and he changed our lives. Now we got this bloke called
Ben White was our star center back the year before.
Exactly. And so it's difficult, and it is around understanding, and we can only guess, right? And I can look at the two teams that we played. The first team, Forest, had the lowest percentage in the league last year on possession. So I said to myself, we're picking a team of build-up people, Then you look a bit deeper, you think, actually, Declan Rice is normally a left 6 or, left centre mid, and now we're inverting from the right. And that sort of makes sense to make him feel comfortable. So I explained that one away. And then you look at the last game against Palace, and Partey was wider, much more. And then there's less defensive rotations. But then you see Rice playing a true 6 on the right-hand side and left. You think, oh, dear, this is interesting. So what's really happening here? And I think when I was a lad, Elliot, when I had an afro, I'd go and watch Arsenal in the early 2000s. I used to love, I don't know if listeners are aware of this, but I used to love Patrick Vieira, right? And the reason why I loved him so much was I felt he'd do two jobs. I mean, literally on some days, we'd put him in midfield with Gilles Grimondi, and it was okay because he did all the jobs in there. And that's why I started to get more interested in football and analysing it. And I use terms like redundancy, right? And I don't like seeing people doing one job and they're redundant. If you're going to do one job, you better be really good at it, right? So when you're building a team, you're looking for people not to be redundant in phases of the game. So 3 phases of the game: in possession, out of possession, and transition, right? So speed of your ability to flick from defensive transition to offensive transition, you look for those players who are happy in all parts of the pitch. And he's introduced that to us with his player selection identification in recent years. You can see there's less redundancy in our team. People are happy in more places in the pitch. But the next phase for us seems to be, to me, we want more people like Vieira doing 2 jobs. And so you can call it hybrid, you can call it whatever you like. The ability to do jobs, but actually doing 2 jobs in game, that's the difference. So we know Ben White can play centre-back and right-back, but he's actually doing it in the same game and really doing it. You see what I mean? And then people are taking their position off of him. You've got Thomas Partey who's playing right-back and centre midfield, but he's really playing centre midfield, and then he's really playing high and wide as a right-back. Got Declan Rice playing 6 and 8, and he's doing it for real. But what's happening is the reaction of the other players to fill in the spaces that they leave. I think that's the key thing. So we've created a form of people doing 2 jobs, lots of them doing 2 jobs, to the point now where only one or two of them are doing singular jobs. Maybe Saliba controlling from the back, almost like a FIFA controller, controlling the whole team, and
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
these two almost two faces of each player, and their absolute instantaneous reaction to move from one job to the other with full confidence, knowing that their teammates are going to cover what they've left behind. That's pretty stunning change in how we play. I think as fans, I think we need to try to understand it. Well, this is how I'm seeing it. Does that make sense to you? We're doing so
Yeah.
many different things in game. That comfort of, you said it, traditional back four, you said it, it makes us feel comfortable, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it? What this system does, or how we're playing and how we're increasing the roles of people, it doesn't feel comfortable until we understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. Look, it's interesting because I've sort of convinced myself that this isn't just some Gabriel's had his head turned by Saudi Arabia thing. I think Mikel Arteta is, I think, a fairly transparent manager, actually, by and large. And I think we saw him use Thomas Partey this way at the end of last season, too. When the title was gone, he started playing with this a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I think at that time, a lot of it was our assumptions about availability. This time it may be too, because Zinchenko is sort of the key ball progressor inverting. And without him, Mikel may feel we simply need another one. And the only other one he trusts to do it as much as Zinchenko is Thomas Partey. So that may have contributed to it. It will be interesting, though, now, because Zinchenko is back and Tomiyasu is not available. And so the natural, obvious inclination is that Zinchenko is going to come back in. What I will say is, I can't imagine, Clive, that he can go Partey, White, Saliba, Zinchenko. That feels very aggressive.
Yeah.
Whatever you think of Tomiyasu as a defender, and Timber, I think, is quite good at it. Having Zinchenko inverting off the left and Partey inverting off the right, and really just having that sort of White and Saliba central area occupation. I don't know. It feels a little vulnerable. And yet I find myself thinking he's going to do it. Because what he's got in front of him is the worst defense in the Premier League coming to the Emirates. And it's a chance to really, I think, push the pedal down even further on this dominate the ball, dominate the chances approach that we've taken. So am I crazy? Is that just way too open a way to play?
I think dominate the ball, dominate the chances, that's one aspect. But dominate the space. Remember last year, and I was moaning, like I do, post the Brentford game when Brentford went long, and our
Stay in your
ability,
lane, Clive. That's my lane. I do the moaning around here.
and our ability to recover into the spaces was challenged on the day, and we were destabilized. Then other teams started to do it a little bit more, and it sort of led towards maybe a bit of a rocky end of form when people missed out our front door press, right? It missed it out completely. And so what's happening now is our domination of the spaces. And that is, I will say, bringing in Havertz and Rice, their ability to run and read and get to the ball first in either direction is really, really impressive. Really impressive. Our running power, physicality has improved with them on board, with obviously Saliba back in the room, Thomas Partey still on the pitch. Suddenly we're getting to a drop of the ball and we're retaining really, really well. So I look at it now and I just say to myself, where are we going? I think pre-season, do you remember we played Gabriel centre back in one of the games and we didn't look so good? I can't remember which one it was. I think that was a trial. I think when we played Kivior left, it was a trial. When we're playing Partey here now, I think it's a trial. When I say trial, it's an option, and I think all of these are options. I don't think Gabriel plays well as a central centre-back. So that's maybe been thrown away. That may be our weakness. The only other person who could probably do it is probably Ben White. But Saliba's unique. So do we have a weakness there? And I think we do. So I think that's what we need to buy in a centre-back area, somebody dominating, somebody that has the aura. No one's going to have the aura of Saliba, but we need another aura centre-back that stands up, that can be physical. So I think Kivior could play at the weekend quite easily. And Thomas Partey play as well. We could see Zinchenko come in. To be honest, I'm open to all of it. And it's like we are preparing for a day which isn't Fulham. It's for the days down the road that we are looking and learning about our players, about where they're best used, what day best to use them. And we all said, didn't we? We wanted to get depth. We wanted to make sure we're in shape when it really counts. I'll be interested to see when we do what the rotation around those key players are, like Thomas Partey, for example. Does he need to play this game, running up and down the touchline? Do we sit him down for the next game, which is it Man United?
Yeah, it is.
And so it makes a bit of sense, isn't it? So let's see where we're going. I'm still learning about this and the manager, what he's going to be like this season with the Champions League coming up. And I think it's just incumbent upon us to sort of open our minds up to what he's trying to do and what he's trying to tell us, which is, I'm going to be different. We're going to be harder to read. We're going to make sure we do have players rotating in all aspects of the pitch, not just the front five, but in the back five as well.
And you got to be careful, because you could think to yourself, this is a game to experiment a little bit. A bad team coming to the Emirates. We're good. They're bad. Hey, no problem. But like Southampton took points off us at the Emirates. Bournemouth, thankfully, didn't. Made for a fun day, but almost took points off us at the Emirates, right? It was some of the bottom teams that caused us some of the biggest problems last season, and we can't afford to have that again. Let me just give you a little context on Fulham, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Fulham have the worst defense in the Premier League. And when I say they have the worst defense in the Premier League, I mean no one is anywhere near them in terms of how bad they are. If you want to look at goals allowed, they look all right, middle of the pack, 3 goals allowed. Okay, no big deal. If you want to look at expected goals allowed, Wolves is second worst, as are Everton. 4.4 expected goals allowed, okay? Through 2 games, that's not great, is it, Clive?
No.
Fulham, having played mighty Everton and a decent Brentford, have allowed 6.4 expected goals through 2 games. 6.4. Now, Everton, would you say Everton are a mighty attacking force that you have to be terrified of? Is that how you characterize them?
Not really, no.
In the first half of Fulham's first game against Everton, they were outshot 10-1 and conceded 3 big chances. In the first half to Everton, they continued to get battered in the second half and somehow won 1-0. A stunning failure in finishing. Against Brentford, they were almost as bad and then got sent down to 10 men. Tim Ream sent off, so he won't be available. So you take the worst team defensively and you take out Tim Ream. Now, you could argue they've been so bad. Does it hurt them to lose Tim Ream? Maybe whoever comes in is better. They still have the decaying corpse of Willian that can run around a little bit. The rest of it is really weak. They're trying to play Raul Jimenez up top. But like the thing I want to ask you about is Palhinha, because Palhinha is legit good, but he hasn't been starting for them. He did come on against
He hurt his
Brentford.
shoulder, I think, in pre-season. That's why he's not been around. And if he was around, I think he'd have been sold. He was that valued.
Well, I mean, he was, valued very, very, very highly. He did come on in the last game. And I would say that for a team that has been the worst, the worst defense in the league, as I highlighted, and worse than you can possibly imagine. I've seen links to Liverpool, and West Ham. But, I mean, Liverpool could use Palhinha. I think at one point, maybe he was even linked to Manchester City, I think at one point. This is a player that can change the dynamic a little bit and can make that midfield battle a lot more difficult to win, and create a transition game that Fulham could leverage into some chances. So is he sort of the key for you? If they're able to get him in the lineup to start, does that change the midfield battle for you a bit? I mean, it has to, right?
If you want to, last week we spoke about Crystal Palace, and they lumped a lot of the creative responsibility and talismanic responsibility from Zaha to Eze. And Fulham's talisman is Mitrovic, and Mitrovic has gone. And they've got Jimenez in, and this is the problem they have, because there are some players that mean more than just a number in the shirt. And Mitrovic has gone up, gone down with them, scored 40 plus goals when he's in the Championship. This is a major player spiritually and emotionally to them. And I'm afraid Jimenez just hasn't got it since we what happened to him at the Emirates that day. He hasn't found the same bravery and the same pizzazz he used to have. They brought in Adama into the team to help him, and they brought in a young player at the back called Calvin Bassey. Again, the only reason I know about him, Elliot, because my Rangers leanings, right? So he used to play for Rangers, and then he went to Ajax. He's a left-footed centre-back. He used to be a left-back. Sort of player that was a team like Liverpool could do with, actually. Somebody can play inside and out. That third defender on the outside. quite a bombastic, forward-thinking player. I'm not sure of his absolute quality, but he's got potential. And again, he's a young player that needs to be settled into a settled team, which Fulham are not. They're not a settled team. You know, sometimes in the game of football, you can almost smell the teams that are doing quite well. You know, like your Brightons and your Brentfords, they got it together. If you're a player, you think, I won't mind joining them. Okay, money's money, right? But I don't think it's going to be too many players queuing up to join Fulham at the moment because they can smell problems. They can smell Saudi Arabia looking around at Willian. I'm not sure if he's going to go or gone. There's problems there. Palina's sitting there that could go. There's problems there. The manager was approached by Saudi. He stuck around, but you can see that the boat is unsettled. So I'm not, they come at a good time to us, right? We do well against them at home and they come at a good time. So let's just go and do our job against them and absolutely smash them into smithereens, and so we can go and enjoy our Saturday nights.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you very much. They are the perfect combination of not carrying that much threat and being absolutely terribly disorganized at the back. You might say this is an opportunity, for example, for a Trossard to start, maybe over Martinelli, who hasn't been at his best. But, if I'm Mikel Arteta, I'm looking to get I hate to say first choice because everybody's kind of first choice. We don't, other than Bukayo Saka, right? Nobody's clear first choice. I'd want to get that left-hand side unlocked a little bit against Fulham if I could, right? I'd want to get Kai an assist or a goal if I could, or get Martinelli off to a start on the score sheet if I could. So I'd be looking to keep them in there. If I was going to go with Trossard anywhere, hopefully you can bring him on early, with 30 minutes to go in the game. And the way games are played now, that could be 40 minutes to go in the game. I guess it's almost harsh to even ask it because he's done just about everything asked of him so far, but he didn't really finish against Palace, so it's worth bringing up. Do you think Nketiah will continue to start up front?
Maybe. I genuinely would like to see something different. I don't think it's a mark of failure, but Eddie seems to like to be on the right hand side of our team a little bit.
Everybody does.
And also with Thomas Partey, who used to take care of the right half from centre mid anyway, but now he's playing right back, and he's so good at getting to passing lanes. And like Odegaard, you sort of give him the ball, And then so you got Odegaard, Partey, Saka, and Eddie down one side. On the left-hand side, you've got people that are completely isolated, having to do magic to get around people, etc. And it feels a little bit imbalanced. And when Jesus comes back, I just think he balances us out a little bit more. And the only other one that balances us out, I just think he reads combinations, is Trossard, So that's just, again, I can only go on what I've seen before historically, and I'm trying to wipe my mind, almost like Men in Black, wipe my mind, new season, new competitions. Don't keep doing what you saw before. Allow your mind to be open to see something new. But I can't help but think we're a team that attacks by committee, and our best committee forwards are Trossard and Jesus. And maybe one of our better defensive forwards is Havertz, who allows us to play around and over things, when we're under high pressure against the big teams. And Eddie's somebody that plays really, really well. When he plays really, really well, I'm not sure we play really, really well. Does that make sense? I'm just I'm not convinced by that. And then we've won a couple of games of him. So what that make sense? But I think we lack cohesion a little bit. But I did say in his last game, he was technically better. He was sound. I just think he's not as collaborative as others. And that's his style, right? He's a selfish forward, and that's absolutely fine as well, as long as you're scoring. And if you're not scoring, then people then question you in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those things. We used to say it with Aubameyang, right? We were, even when he was at his absolute pomp at Arsenal, our argument with Aubameyang is if his XG was good and he was getting in dangerous scoring positions, Aubameyang's doing the Aubameyang job. Judge him on that. Because that was his superpower. Somehow get into positions to score goals because he had a real good feel for runs and got into dangerous positions at a very high rate. But I think what we came to understand with Aubameyang too is unless he's scoring 25 goals a season, he does hold back the way the other players around him play. And so there is a delta, I think, in goal scoring where it starts to be an issue. If you have a 25 goal a season striker, you can afford to carry a guy who's probably less involved in what others do. I'll give you a perfect example, by the way. Have a look at Manchester City. How many touches a game does Erling Haaland have? 9?
Yeah.
8? 3 of them are in the back of the net. And I think the argument with Erling Haaland, and this was very true at the start of last season, was Erling Haaland is making Manchester City worse overall. And the reason for that was their build-up play and their attacking play wasn't as effective. But you know what? If you score 40 goals in a season, then you don't need to be as effective in other phases of the game because you're getting your goals. And I think Eddie, this is gonna get clipped up and put on the internet, me comparing Eddie to Erling Haaland. But like I do think that there is a similarity in styles of play. We clearly want to play a little bit the way City want to play. And with Eddie, I think we're clearly playing with a player who is a lower touch finisher. I wouldn't mind seeing like a Trossard, someone who shows their boots a little more and combines a little more.
I have a preference.
But yeah.
I have a preference.
Me too. Go ahead, please.
But what I'll say, Eddie, is I thought Eddie had his cleanest technical game in his last game, right? So I thought that was one of his better games, and he didn't score. I've often said to you, I don't care about him scoring. I care about how we look as a collective unit, and I thought that was one of my favourite Eddie games at Man United at home last year. It was obviously a good one, but that was one of my favourite Eddie games because I felt when the ball went into him, he was ready. He'd lay it off. He would set or get it back. He was bright. He was making runs, short runs, channel runs. I thought, yeah, there you go. Really, really sharp. And that's why one of our stock rises when we did the instant reaction around him. But I may be looking a slightly down the road. I think there's more to come offensively and cohesion-wise. So I'm looking at the pieces in place and asking myself, what's different for when we are really cohesive? We've made a number of changes, right? Havertz could be one of those reasons as well, though we use Xhaka as a decoy, and Havertz is doing the same decoy role. We're just not finding him in the box, and he's doing a lot. Havertz doing a lot defensively, running and reading the drop of the ball and keeping the ball in a playmaker way where he doesn't get pressed like Xhaka used to because he can look after it, right? So we get a lot of continuity from him. So I'm just looking at it, not for today, not for Sunday, but there's also a number of players sitting on the bench, like you mentioned. I'd like to see just given a few more minutes to see what we can find out about them. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I think the data, the eye test works. I think people know what we have in Eddie Nketiah, but the data sort of backs it up. Now, to be fair, you also want to be a little bit careful about data. When you're looking at 2 games, right? I think that's probably fair to point out as well. But when you look at Eddie Nketiah both this season and last season, Eddie Nketiah, of all the forwards we play, is at the bottom of things like progressive passes, passes into the penalty area, key passes, which is a pass that leads to a shot, and expected assists, okay, which is the quality of chance you set up. Yeah. And you can say, well, he's the striker. Strikers don't do that. But a player, for example, who is good at that data, those stats, is Gabriel Jesus. Yeah. He's very high on things like expected assists and progressive passes and key passes. And it's because, and this goes without saying, he's our starter. He's our first choice 9. He has a better feel for when to drop in, how to combine, how to, move the ball forward to the wingers. And I think, look, as with all due respect to Eddie, our best attacking players, even over Jesus probably, are Martinelli and Saka and Odegaard, right? Yeah. And so you want the center forward to find ways to bring them into the game. And I think it's more natural for Trossard to do that. So it's tough because guess who leads us in expected goals? Eddie Nketiah, right? Eddie Nketiah is doing a number 9's job in a traditional sense, but maybe not doing a number 9's job in an Arsenal sense as well as it could be done. But Mikel's picked him, which means he's doing what he's been asked. I have a weird feeling for Trossard in this game, but I can't decide if I think it'll be at the expense of a Martinelli or an Eddie Nketiah. It may be the case that Mikel knows Eddie's minutes are going to dry up this season. It's going to get hard because Gabriel Jesus will come back. Trossard's going to get some minutes. Kai might play number 9 in some of the harder games. Maybe, is it possible, Clive, that the manager who rates this player and convinces this player to stay wants to give him minutes where those minutes are available so that he is rewarded for what the manager has called out as being training like crazy and being a great part of the group?
It could be. And We had a conversation around Eddie when Jesus got injured last Christmas, and there was a lot of angst around that conversation because we were all a little bit worried when Jesus had a 3-monther. I'm not worried. This conversation right now is an easy conversation. We're talking 5-10 percentiles because he's improved since that day. You know, he's improved in his movement, his speed, his technical control. He's improved. Have we improved offensively? We're probably looking at this team thinking, you know what, this team is defensively focused. They are on it. They are not having anyone push them around. So we can all look at that. We took our best defender out and we're still on it, right? So as we learn about our midfield construction, right? So, but then we all, back of my minds, were a little bit cheesed off. We didn't score 3 or 4 against Forest. And okay, the referee maybe took a goal away from us. We'd have probably beat them by 2 at Palace. So we haven't had our little goal fest. So we're waiting for it. And so it'd be interesting to see what happens. But I've got no angst over this. I've got no angst. Eddie, who he is, and he's really improving. And I was really impressed with him last game. But like anything, like anybody, I want to see a little bit more from not just him, but from Havertz and Martinelli and Saka. Well, I want to see them all stick it in the back of their net, right? So how are we going to do it? We got a chance maybe the weekend. I don't want to disrespect Fulham because, as Forest showed, give someone a sniff, they'll take it, right? So I don't want to disrespect them, but we have a chance if we're offensively focused to really do something against them, which I think would be a positive step for Man United.
Yeah. I think we need to get our attack on track this game. And this thing, by the way, if people are like, what are we complaining about Eddie for? Eddie had our best chances in the last game, a little unlucky with finishing, played pretty well. He's scored a goal already this season. I totally get it. But I don't think anybody listening to this could argue our attack hasn't impressed the way we might have expected in these opening 2 fixtures. It's been a bit of a concern. And granted, the second fixture, we played half an hour with 10 men. And so then when you say that, you say, well, Martinelli's here to stay. He's going to start. That's just it. Saka's here to stay. He's going to start. Odegaard's here to stay. He's going to start. And Kai Havertz was 65 million pounds. He's here to stay. He's going to start. So if you say the attack hasn't been firing, there's only one guy in the attack that all of us agree is an option, but not the option. And so he's going to come under more scrutiny, fairly or unfairly, by the way, because I'm not saying those other guys have been brilliant. In fact, go ahead. I rewatched the game against Palace. And the first half, what I will say is, wow, did we do a great job in possession and build up and things like that. But you know what? Saka, I love Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka did not have a great Saka day in terms of his final contribution in the final third. Martin Odegaard was well off his best distributing in the final third. Martinelli wasn't in the game the way he normally is. So I'm not saying any of those guys have been good enough. I just think we know those guys aren't going anywhere. So the attention winds up on the guy who's the backup,
Yeah, and I feel I hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, and I know that's true, but I also know it's a little bit unfair. It's almost like the apprentice at work. He never quite gets paid as much as the guy you bring from the outside. You know what I mean? It's like it's not fair. It's not fair on that guy, and he might have to leave to go and get his true worth, right? So, I look. You know where I am with Eddie. I think he's a fine player, but there's more to come, right? And there's more to come in the attack. But it's not just him. I think Martinelli's been okay. Against Forest, he was outstanding, wasn't he, for the first hour? And Havertz was outstanding. I felt a Charity Shield. Saka's been in and out. His movement off the ball is brilliant. He knows when to go short, when to go long, and every time he makes a decision, the ball arrives, and he's already there. He's just a fantastic player. The final pass has not been quite there, but it's going to come. Right, it's August. Odegaard's been fine. The reason why I like about this group, Elliot, is when there was a bit of pressure towards the end of Forest, when there was a bit of pressure towards the end of Palace, we turned into something else and we got more serious. We either low blocked them and said, yeah, what do you got? At Palace. Or we then got more serious in our passing and our ball possession and our ability to read the drop of the ball and return them over as we did against Forest. So I'm liking that side of us, the side that really understands what winning is, and I think the introductions of someone like a Declan Rice, I think he's somebody that will never play well against, I'll say before for England, against North Macedonia. He ain't bothered with that game. But when it's a hard game or a hard period, then he really steps up. And I think that's happening to more players. I can really see them stepping up in the critical moment. are not falling away. And if you want to win the big stuff, mate, that's exactly what we need. And we also need to win in a less emotional way, in a quite economical way. We're going to have games on a Wednesday that are going to feel big to us, but the players need to have a play style and an approach and an emphasis on the critical fundamental parts of the game, which allows the game to be easier for them. But part of that is scoring at the right time, otherwise the game becomes stressful naturally. So can we control the scoreboard? Then we can control the pace of the game. So I'm looking ahead, because what we're doing now is not for now. It's for when we have a big European game followed by a big six game away on a Saturday night. That's what we're building for these moments, to come out of that with the maximum points. And that's new for us, right? So we have to open our minds up to that.
Yeah, one of the reasons I think I'd like to see Zinchenko come back in is just to see if we can restore a little bit of balance. Like, I think at our best last season, we were still right side dominant, but there was a decent amount of balance to the threat we carried at both sides, and we were able to switch the play pretty effectively. I think in our first two games, the right side dominance has been maybe too overemphasized, and we've been slow to switch the play and build up the left-hand side, which isn't helping Kai Havertz integrate. Certainly it isn't helping Martinelli either. And I think with Zinchenko, if you have more access to Havertz, I think you'll see our attack blossom in a way it didn't last season, because what we all believe or hope is that Havertz can add something in attack that Xhaka did not. That's the hope. He hasn't really had the access to doing that. But I think if Zinchenko steps in and gets into those more advanced left half space areas, and Kai can make second man runs and, exchange passes with Martinelli, I think we could really see a new dimension to the attack. And I think Zinchenko was somewhat key to unlocking that. The issue is, I'd also like to see the White-Saka partnership come back a little on the right and see what that does for that side. Now, if you're going to do that, and this is, I think, the last point here, Clive, if you go back to White and Zinchenko with Gabriel and Saliba in the middle, if you go to that 4, now you don't have to, by the way, you could do, you could do Partey, Saliba, and Zinchenko. We already discussed that, feels open. But if you go back to the back 4 of last season, you cannot pick Partey and Rice.
Yeah,
there's no room.
So you sit Thomas Partey, right? He's the one with.
That's what I wanted to ask. Is that what you do?
He's the one with the WD-40 in his hips, right? He's the one who's 30 years of age. You just need to. There's no problem. You sit him for Fulham at home. It's not a problem. But the big games, you decide what you want to do, right? And that's what these players are playing for right now. Remember last year when we lost Martinelli, when Jesus came out, we lost Martinelli because the left side just lost a bit of glue, right? But we had Zinchenko. Now we haven't got Zinchenko and Jesus. So left side is really, not say struggling, but it's just not quite as sharp as it could be. And I almost don't want to judge them until we do see one of or both of Zinchenko and Jesus in there. Because I think Havertz and Martinelli and that combination, I think it could be really, really good. I really feel that.
Can I ask you one thing, though? If we do that, if we go to White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Zinchenko, the biggest change in the dynamic there is that Zinchenko obviously would be the inverting fullback off the left. If we sit Partey down for this game, fine. That means Rice has to occupy a little more of that right half space that Partey's so comfortable occupying traditionally. How do you see Rice adapting to that? Because that is a bit of a change. I mean, he played very centrally against Palace and looked very comfortable. And by the way, his best involvement in the whole game, stepping in off the right half space, right into the final third to play Nketiah in for what should have been a beautiful assist. So I think he can do it. But what do you think of that as a dynamic? The fact that Rice in that kind of setup would just have to get more comfortable being more of a right-sided player where he's traditionally been a bit more of a left-sided player.
Yeah, there's a few lessons from the Palace game. So I would have been a little bit worried about the fit of Rice into our team, because I thought we bought Timber to allow him to stay left. Do you see what I mean? Inverting from the right, as we're doing our stuff pre-season. But seeing Rice play 6 like he played it at Palace was like, the future is here, right? So there you go. He's just tremendous in that role. So don't worry about him anymore. He can play left, right. That's gone. That's been erased. Right, so seeing, and this is your Tim shout actually, seeing Jorginho come on as the closer but in front, you know what I mean? I thought that was a great shout from Tim. Jorginho came on and that was the end of that. Everything changed, everything stopped. Everyone knew where to stand. Everyone looked at him and said, "You're in charge of this," and he just took over. And then seeing Zinchenko come on, just look after the football the way he does. He makes it look so easy. People run towards him, he just turns away, turns back again, pops it off, gets it back. Next minute, 5 passes are gone and they've dropped off 5 yards. And it's like, we're not going to get embarrassed by this lot. We're going to stop that pressing lark, because he's now doing his stuff. He makes you feel so comfortable. And I can't say I don't want to see that in our football team, But then there's some people saying, but what about the time he got nutmegged at Anfield, Clive? And that's the thing, right? We have to manage him. I don't think he's a 90-minute player, if that makes sense. Nor does he need to be. I think that's what we've got to get with. He doesn't need to do 90 minutes. We can do other things for the last 20 minutes and solidify and change and protect those calves, right? We've got to do something.
I totally agree. There's one thing that does annoy me, though, when people, I think, overstate the vulnerability of Zinchenko defensively when he's in our team is he got nutmegged at Anfield. I mean, William Saliba's given the ball to the opposition. Gabriel's given away a penalty. Like, defenders have bad moments. When Saliba, White, Gabriel, and Zinchenko played last season, we were the best defense in the league away from home, period.
Yeah.
That didn't happen by accident, people. So don't tell me Zinchenko makes us defensively vulnerable. What made us defensively vulnerable is the way we were destabilized defensively, and we had players like, with all due respect, Rob Holding starting, right? We then lost White. Saliba is our best defender, and it destabilized us. But when that back four started away from home last season, we were the best defense, and I think we can be again. My biggest thing going into tomorrow is this. If he wants to reintegrate Zinchenko, going into Saturday, I should say, if he wants to reintegrate Zinchenko, I just want us, what I want? I want us to go into the United game feeling very sure about how we want to approach that game and with what personnel. And this game gives Mikel a chance, if he wants to look at a different setup, like our traditional back four from last season, one time before the United game, because that's the back four he's thinking of picking for that game. I'd like him to get a chance to play it. Maybe it's for 30 minutes against Fulham or whatever it is. But if we're going to play without Partey and just Rice, which we have not done yet this season, obviously, and that's a lot of responsibility on Rice. Give him a game to get comfortable in that role. Let's just see how we do. I think we can leave it there. I think we're going to learn a lot from this game. It is a chance for our attack to get on track, but I'm going to use the words from last season that nobody knows what they mean. Trap game, right? It's Manchester United next weekend. That's a statement game. They look a mess. We're going to want to get at them. Fulham are bad. Their defense is bad. Their attack is bad. We're just going to stop them, right? You have to earn that win. You don't get to just get 3 points and play United. You've got to batter Fulham. So I'd like to see a really professional performance, because against Forest at home in the first week, I thought we were very professional in the first half, and I thought we kind of got a bit arrogant and complacent in the second half and made that game a little nervier than it needed to be. We have to stay laser focused. I think Mikel is obviously great at keeping his players in that mindset, and I'm excited to see what they can produce. In the wake of Luton beating Chelsea tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, let's leave it there. Clive's on Twitter, ClivePFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith, the Blackman Twitter. The Football Content Awards are out. It's one that we like to participate in. If you want to vote for us, you can go to their website and vote for us for Best Premier League Podcast. If you'd like to do it, you can look on the podcast Twitter. We have a pinned tweet about how you can do it. If not, no big deal. It's just one of those things. Kind of neat, but also, very, very secondary in the grand scheme of things. So love you so much. Hope you've enjoyed everything we've been doing this week. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Charles, and we'll have a heck of a lot more as the days go by. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Fulham, no.